My mother didn't even hug me, just pointed to the gift table like I was part of the catering staff. That's when I knew this night wasn't about family. It was about erasing me quietly. Have you ever shown up to a family event and felt like you weren't supposed to exist? Not ignored, not overlooked, erased. If that hits something deep in you, keep listening because this isn't just a story about betrayal. This is one of those revenge stories where the quietest person in the room ends up flipping the whole thing upside down. I was 10 hours into the drive when the voice message from my mother played for the third time. Rowan, the party is at 7, please use the back entrance. The caterers will be unloading there. No need to come through the front. It'll draw attention. And wear something appropriate. This night is for liar. That last part was what stuck with me the most. This night is for liar. As if it ever wasn't. I had just come back from a 6-week overseas assignment I couldn't talk about. One that left me with a stitched wound along my rib cage. And another one deeper in my chest. But sure, I'll take the back door. The mansion in PTOAC hadn't changed. Same manicured hedges, same perfectly staged exterior. Only difference was the smell of money had gotten stronger and colder. I parked my Honda Accord, 10 years old and still running like hell, next to the catering van by the recycling bins. The smell of rotting shrimp cocktail and wet cardboard wafted up as I killed the engine. Welcome home, I guess. There was a moment, just one, where I thought, maybe they'll surprise me. Maybe someone will greet me at the door. Maybe Dad will shake my hand. Maybe Mom will hug me. Instead, I opened the service entrance and stepped into the chaos of a catering kitchen. A man I didn't recognize glanced at me, wiped his hands on his apron, and said, "You here to help with the trays?" I almost said yes. Through the swinging door, I could hear laughter, the clink of glasses, and the high-pitched polish of Leia's voice. I stepped into the dining hall. That's when I saw her. My mother, Clarissa Hayes, perfect navy dress, perfect posture, perfect detachment. She didn't smile, didn't flinch, just looked past me like I was a moving object in the background. "Good. You're here," she said. "Put Leia's gift over there. And please don't distract her before the speech. No hug. No. How was your drive?" Just a checklist tone and a finger pointed to the corner. Like I was luggage delivery. I took a breath, held it, then forced a smile I had perfected over 2 decades. Because that's what you do, right? You show up, you shut up, you smile. I walked through the sea of people, most of them senators, think tank donors, and Pentagon wives. Every single one of them turned to look at me like, "Oh, you're the other one." One woman even whispered to her husband, "I didn't know she had a sister." My father was near the fireplace, laughing with the governor. He gave me a nod. Not a wave, not a smile. Just that polite political nod you give a stranger who might have donated to your campaign once. I couldn't feel my feet. My hands tingled. But I kept moving like I had clearance to walk through pain. And then came Lyre, my little sister, the golden one. She glided through the room like a crowned debutante. When she saw me, her lips curled into a sugar-coated grin. "Oh, there you are," she said loudly, draping an arm over my shoulder like we were best friends. "Everyone, this is my sister, Rowan. She works for the government. Some desk job at Langley, I think." Laughter, polite, sharp, cutting. Laughter, like champagne glasses breaking quietly. I nodded, smiled, let the mask do its job. Because inside me something cracked. They didn't know I had flown out of Damascus 6 days ago. Didn't know I had carried a wounded teammate on my back for 3 miles through hostile territory. Didn't know I'd killed a man in close quarters with a pen. Because none of that mattered. Not to them. To them, I was just the other one. The one who didn't fit the photo. The one who was always too much. Or never enough. I slipped out through the French doors onto the stone terrace. The fall air bit at my skin, but it was honest, clean, unlike everything inside. I leaned against the railing, looking out at the perfectly trimmed lawn. And for the first time in a long time, I let the thought fully form. I don't belong here. Maybe I never did. But that night wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I wasn't planning to wander the house that night. But when your own mother can't look you in the eye, and your sister parades you around like her sad little charity case, sometimes you just need a quiet place to breathe. For me, that place had always been the library. Still smelled the same. Leather, lemon polish, and that faint, sharp scent of old paper. The lights were low, like always. Dad never liked bright bulbs in legacy rooms. Said it felt tacky. I ran my fingers along the mahogany shelves, passing the family law books no one ever opened, the collected speeches Dad had bound in leather like scriptures. Every title in that room had weight. Every frame on the wall, a carefully chosen piece in a shrine built for one thing, image. I stopped in front of the photo wall. Framed achievements. There was Liar shaking hands with a senator, my brother at his promotion ceremony, Mom at a fundraiser beside the First Lady. Every moment polished, curated, frozen in gold leaf and glass. And then I found it. A family portrait taken when I was 19. We were standing on the front lawn. Dad had made us wear matching navy and cream. I remembered that day because I almost didn't show. I had just gotten my first letter from the FBI Academy. That was the moment I finally thought maybe, just maybe, they'd be proud of me. But the version of the photo hanging there didn't match my memory. Something was off. My eyes scanned the frame. There was a weird space between Leia and the hedge, like someone was missing. I leaned closer, and that's when I saw it. The cut. A clean but slightly jagged trim right where I should have been standing. I touched the glass right where my body used to be. My fingers landed on air, on nothing. They'd cut me out. Literally no Photoshop, no fancy digital touch-up, just old-fashioned scissors and indifference. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Then I let out a laugh. Quiet, bitter. In case you're wondering, no, they never told me they changed the photo. They didn't even bother to reframe it. Just slid the new cropped version back into the same old frame like I'd never been there. Like I was a mistake easily edited out. The first time I learned about the cropped photo was from my Aunt Carol years ago. I thought she was joking. Your mom got a smaller frame and had to cut someone. She'd said, you just didn't fit, dear. You know how she is. About balance. 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 Like I was a crooked painting. Like my presence tilted the whole damn picture off center. And somehow this physical removal hurt more than the 1,000 Passive-aggressive jabs or the years of silence because a part of me still believed if I just did more, worked harder, served better, they'd see me. I mean, I bled for this country. Carried classified intel through war zones. I've had a gun pressed to my temple more times than I can count. But what really shattered me was a picture. A picture that said loud and clear, "You're not part of us. Not even enough to exist in a frame." It's strange, right? How one moment can rip open wounds you thought had scarred over. I stood there for a long time, staring at that sliver of lawn where I used to be, the echo of a presence now deleted. And if you're still watching, let me ask you something real. Have you ever been erased by people who claim to love you? Not screamed at, not attacked, just quietly removed. Like your name didn't match their plans, like your face ruined the photo. If you've been there, if this hits something raw, I want to hear it. Drop your story in the comments. Even if it's just one sentence, because I swear to you, sometimes it helps just to know someone else gets it. You don't need to explain everything. Just say, "They cut me out, too." That's enough. Because right then in that cold library surrounded by portraits of perfect children and polished awards, I finally saw the truth. They hadn't abandoned me recently. They'd started deleting me a long time ago. They just never thought I'd notice. But now I had. And something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But I wasn't numb anymore either. The house was too loud. Too many voices. Too many glasses clinking. Too many conversations about promotions, politics, and how wonderful Liar looked. Tonight, I needed air. I slipped through the side hallway back toward the kitchen, figuring I could grab a bottle of water and regroup before someone else tried to catch up with me through gritted smiles. That's when I saw it. The French doors leading out to the patio were propped open, probably to help the air flow with so many people inside. But what stopped me cold wasn't the door. It was the thing wedged beneath it. I thought it was just a folded cloth napkin at first. Then I saw the blue field of stars, the crisp triangle of wool. My throat closed. No, 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 no. I moved closer, dropped to one knee. It was a folded American flag. My flag. David's flag. The one that had draped his casket after he died beside me in Syria. The one I had carried home in silence. The one I had placed in my mother's hands and begged her to keep safe until I had a home of my own. It wasn't in a case. It wasn't displayed. It wasn't even set aside respectfully. It was being used as a door's stop. One corner already fraying from scraping against the stone, dust clinging to the fabric, as if it were just some rolled-up mat someone grabbed because it was nearby. I picked it up. Slowly, gently, brushed off the dust with the back of my hand, and for a second I couldn't move. Have you ever held something that meant the world to you and watched the people you love treat it like garbage? Because I have, and it burns in a way I can't explain. I don't cry easily. I've trained myself not to. But right then, kneeling on the cold tile, flag in hand, I felt something crack. Not from the disrespect, from the casualness of it, like it didn't even register to them that this mattered. I stood up, flag clutched to my chest, and walked through the kitchen. Mom was there talking to the caterer about table arrangements. She turned, saw me holding the folded flag, and her expression barely changed. "Oh, that," she said. "It kept the wind from slamming the doors. We didn't have anything else that looked appropriate. Appropriate. My lips parted, but no words came out, so I just stared at her. Don't be dramatic, Rowan, she added, already turning away. It's just a flag. Just a flag. Just a dead man's service. Just a symbol of everything we swore we'd honor. Just David. Just my best friend. Just the man who shielded me with his body when that wall came down. Just a flag. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the thing and watch it burst into flames so they'd see what it meant. Instead, I turned and I walked back into the hallway into the shadows. That's when I ran into my father. He was on the phone pacing near the study. He gave me a nod like I was a lobbyist who'd walked in during his golf recap. Then he hung up. Rowan, he said, adjusting his cufflinks. Liar mentioned, Senator Peterson. I blinked, still clutching the flag. I worked protection on one of his trips to Amman. Why? We're finalizing a contract with the Department of Defense. Liar's heading the pitch. Peterson's vote would seal it. Maybe you could reach out. Remind him we're family. I stared at him, still in shock. You're asking me to call in a personal favor? I said for Liar. He smiled. It's for all of us, honey. That's what families do. That's what families do. You use my contacts, my credentials. You ignore my service, my pain, my dead friends. You fold up the last piece of them and shove it under a door. But now you remember who I am. When you want something, when it serves you. In that moment, I understood something I'd been trying not to see for years. I was only valuable to them when I was useful, not loved, not wanted. Just convenient. I didn't answer. I didn't say yes or no. I just turned and walked away, flag still pressed to my ribs like it could hold the pieces of me together. And as I passed through the grand hallway, past the family crest, past the Harvard diplomas, past the smiling faces on the wall, I realized I wasn't angry. I was done. I didn't go back to the motel that night. I couldn't. The thought of walking into that beige room, peeling off the dress shirt I'd been forced to wear, and staring at the ceiling above a stained lamp, it felt suffocating. Instead, I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just away. DC was lit up like always. Clean streets, polished marble, people pretending this city doesn't run on secrets and silent betrayals. I ended up in Georgetown, parking in front of an old bar called the Tombs Basement Place. Brick walls smelled like spilled beer and old wood. It was the kind of place you could disappear in. And I needed that. I slid into a corner stool far from the piano and ordered a bourbon. Neat. No water. The bartender gave me a look like I looked familiar, but not in a good way. Fine by me. I was staring into my glass, counting the slow swirl of amber, when I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years. I'll be damned. Rowan Hayes. I turned. Marcus Vance, my old instructor. CIA Training Class 127. They called him the Hammer. I just called him the first person who ever saw me. He looked older, more gray. In his beard, a little stoop in the shoulders, but the same eyes, sharp. Calm, unshakable. He slid onto the stool next to me like he'd been doing it every week for a decade. Didn't think I'd see you again outside a war zone, he said. Didn't think I'd be seen by anyone this week, I muttered, voice dry. He didn't laugh. Just studied me for a second. Then the bartender set his beer down, and for a few minutes, we just sat in silence. No pressure, no pleasantries, no fake catch-up. Finally, Marcus said, that mess in Tripoli last year, I heard how you handled it. Calm under fire, smart call on the extraction route. I blinked. You heard about that? He nodded, took a sip. We hear things. The good ones always echo back. That hit harder than I expected because no one in my family had ever echoed anything back. Not the sacrifices, not the missions. Not the injuries. They only ever heard what fit their version of me. And Marcus, he just sat there and said, damn, good work. I don't even remember saying thank you. My throat was too tight. Instead, I just stared at the condensation on my glass until the silence got heavy again. Then Marcus said, you look like someone carrying more than your pack. That broke something open. I didn't even mean to speak. But the words poured out. Not the surface stuff, not the job or the flags or the cut photo. The real stuff. I told him about David, about Mark, about Operation Starlight, about choosing to save those kids instead of following direct orders, about the 2 coffins that came home instead of 1. I told him about the nightmares, the silence afterward, the article, the betrayal, and the worst part, how none of it surprised me. Not from my family. I didn't cry, but I felt raw, like I'd taken off armor I hadn't realized I'd been wearing for 20 years. When I finished, I looked down, not sure what I'd see on his face. But Marcus didn't look away, didn't flinch. He nodded slow and deliberate. You made the right call, he said. But I lost 2 men, I whispered. I cost lives, he leaned forward. You saved more. You didn't follow a rule book. You followed the damn mission. People forget, but our job isn't clean. It's not medals and handshakes. It's moral triage. You did what most people can't even imagine. And you came back. Barely, I said, half a breath. Still counts. And then he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small round object, and placed it in my hand. A compass. Old. Brass. The glass was scratched, the edges worn smooth with time. That thing's been through Bosnia, Baghdad, and Burma, he said. It saw me through 3 wars. Now it's yours. I didn't know what to say. He closed my fingers around it gently. So, you never forget. You've got a direction, and you're not lost. You're just surrounded by people who never had a map. That nearly did it. My eyes burned, but I held it together. We didn't talk much after that. Just sat the way soldiers do. Together, but quiet. Before I left, Marcus said, be careful, Rowan. People who got used to you living in their shadow don't usually like it when you start to shine. That night, back in my motel room, I sat on the edge of the bed, still holding the compass. For once, I didn't feel like I was coming apart. I wasn't okay. Not yet. But I wasn't alone anymore. And maybe that was the first step back to something like home. The morning of the National Security Conference, I didn't feel powerful. I felt calm. Not the peaceful kind, more like the stillness right before a storm makes landfall. I stood backstage 30 seconds from walking into the most high-profile speaking slot of my career, holding a flash drive no larger than my thumb, but heavy like a grenade. 20 minutes. That's what I'd been given. 20 minutes. To rewrite everything they thought they knew about me and everything I had tried not to say for 20 years. I adjusted the pin on my lapel, small, discreet, a faded insignia from my unit in Special Activities Division. To most people, it looked like a novelty. To a select few in the audience, it said, "I've seen things you'll never read in a report." The MC's voice echoed through the packed hall. "Please welcome our keynote speaker, Officer Rowan Hayes." The applause was polite, professional. I stepped into the light. Thousands of eyes, suits, medals, lanyards, cameras. And in the front row, my family. My father, Arthur, sat like he was overseeing a hearing, arms folded, chin raised. My mother, Clarissa, immaculate in cream, still cold and liar, smirking like she was watching my funeral. I didn't look at them long. I looked at the people who mattered. The ones who buried secrets for a living, who knew what it meant to trade safety for silence. I took the wireless mic and stepped forward away from the podium. "Good morning," I began, voice steady. "The program says I'll be speaking about emerging asymmetric threats. But I'd like to talk about something older than that, something we don't train for." Pause. "I want to talk about betrayal and the cost of truth." You could feel it then. Air shifting, a few brows raised, phone stilled. This story begins with a mission called Operation Starlight. You won't find it in any press release. It never made headlines, but it happened and people died. I walked them through it step by step. The faulty intel, the civilian children in the blast zone, the impossible choice, and how we made it. We saved the kids, but we lost David and Mark, and not a single headline said their names. There were no parades, no statements. Just 2 closed caskets, and a few of us left behind with the nightmares. I saw heads nod, hands clench. Some of them knew this silence well. Then I shifted. Recently, that operation was mentioned in an article. It claimed recklessness. It implied failure. It questioned the integrity of our work. It also claimed to have sourced that narrative from someone close to the agent involved. I clicked the remote in my hand. Behind me, the screen lit up. An encrypted email screenshot. The sender Clarissa Hayes at GovCom DC. The subject line personal background. Rowan Hayes. Below it, paragraphs of deliberately distorted details. Words like instability, reckless protocol breach, useful leverage. I turned to face the crowd again. That email was sent from a secure government-issued device. The recipient, a political blogger with known anti-agency bias. Gasps audible. Now. A few people leaned forward. A few looked at my mother. You may wonder, how could someone's own family betray them like this? I let the silence settle. Then I added, you'd be amazed what people are willing to trade for $12 million. Click. Next slide. A signed memorandum of understanding between Hayes and Stratton Consulting, my father's firm, and a subcontractor under a defense budget bid, signed by Arthur Hayes. I scanned the audience. Some people looked stunned. Others looked furious, but I saved the most important piece for last. Click. A grainy video began to play. A man's face weathered and scared. A survivor speaking in halting English. The woman with the sad eyes. She came. She saved us. She saved my daughter. Then the camera turned to a little girl, big brown eyes, holding her brother's hand. Tell her thank you, she whispered. The screen went black. I lowered the mic. We're not defined by the medals on our chest. We're defined by the lives we protect in silence. Even when no one thanks us, even when our own families try to erase us. But the thing about truth, it waits and eventually it walks into the room. The applause didn't come right away. It started slow, back row, then side aisle, then erupted, a standing ovation. I didn't smile. I didn't bow. I just looked at my parents. My father's face was pale. His jaw clenched. My mother's hand trembled. Liar. Her smirk had vanished. She looked hollow. And then 3 men in suits entered from the side door. Quiet. Precise. One leaned down and whispered something into my father's ear. Another handed a folded paper to my mother. FBI. I didn't ask why because I already knew. That night, I sat alone on a bench behind the building. The applause long gone. I still held the flash drive, still held the weight of what I'd done. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. For David, for Mark, for the girl in the video. And for the version of me they had spent decades trying to erase. 6 months. That's how long it's been since I walked off that stage and let the truth do what years of silence never could. 6 months since I left behind the house in pack. The polished lies, the empty hugs, and the carefully choreographed cruelty. Now I wake up to bird song. I drink coffee brewed over a gas flame. My closest neighbor is a retired forest ranger named Bill, who stops by once a week to drop off fresh eggs and never asks questions he doesn't want answers to. I live in a small log cabin tucked in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's not fancy, but it's mine. The kind of place you build after everything else burns down and somehow you're still standing. I didn't quit the agency, but I don't go into the field anymore. These days, I lead strategic training for new case officers, young, eager minds who still think loyalty and silence are the same thing. I teach them otherwise. I tell them the hardest choices won't be between right and wrong, but between truth and comfort, between protocol and people. I show them my scar sometimes, the burn from the Starlight Op, not to brag, just so they understand some lessons stay with you. And I tell them this, never let anyone turn your scars into shame. That's what my family tried to do. They turned my life, my service, my silence into a blank space, in a photo, a tool in a deal, a shadow in their perfect image. But not anymore. Now I write my own story. Sometimes Marcus visits. He brings cheap beer and that gruff kind of friendship that says more in silence than most people say in paragraphs. We sit on the porch. We don't talk about the past. We just exist in the kind of peace you earn, not inherit. And that would have been enough truly. But then one crisp afternoon a letter came, no return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Liar. I stood on the porch, thumb tracing the curve of the ink before I opened it. Inside there was no apology, no explanation, just an official notice of transfer. Liar had Requested a reassignment from DC to a small field office in South Dakota. Beneath the form, scribbled in pen, "I'm learning to find my own light. Thank you for showing me the dark." That was it. No grand confession, no begging, just a sentence. And somehow it hit me harder than anything she ever said to my face. I folded the letter and slid it into a drawer beside the alien Marcus gave me. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just felt still. I wasn't angry anymore. And more importantly, I didn't need closure. Not from her, not from any of them, because I had already chosen my peace. And peace doesn't need permission. This morning, I woke before dawn. The mountains were still black silhouettes against a navy sky. I poured my coffee into the chipped blue mug I always use. The one from my first base posting in Amman. I walked out to the porch, barefoot on the cold wood. The wind carried that faint smell of pine and earth. Honest and old. I sat in my rocking chair wrapped in an old wool throw and watched as the light crept across the ridge. And I realized something. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for a phone call, not for an apology. Not for a seat at a table that was never meant for me. I had built my own. And the view from here isn't glamorous, but it's real. And I'd take real over polished any day. If you're still with me, if this story stayed with you somehow, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from the people you were told you couldn't live without, only to realize they never saw you to begin with? Have you ever found peace not in being forgiven, but in being free? You don't have to explain it. Oh. But if this story touched something inside you, drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what you walked away from and what you're building now. Even just a line.